Hello, I'm Linda McIntosh from Studio ABC for my Facebook group, art group, and my YouTube channel are under the same name. Notice that the C is spelled S-E-E because we see the art. But most of my students call me Miss Mac. Today we're going to begin studying the elements of art, and specifically we're going to talk about line as one of the elements of art today. Now, when you get to the next picture, you're probably going to want to hit pause because I'm going to make an assignment right away. I want you to copy the words that you see on the next frame and the definitions into your art journal. And if you don't have an art journal, just do it on a piece of notebook paper. That's fine. We can always glue it in later. If you already have your art journal, section off a part for art vocabulary. We're going to be adding words to this art vocabulary list all during the time that you're in my class. It makes an easy study guide. So be sure to section it off, maybe put a little tab on the outside of your art journal so it will be easy for you to turn to it. So here's where you would hit pause and start copying these words. If you're finished, it's time for us to start exploring the elements of art. If you've taken my class before, you might have heard me refer to elements of art like being the recipe ingredients when you're baking something. You might not need every ingredient in every recipe, and it's the same with art. You may need only one or two ingredients when you're making your art, or one and two ingredients would be your elements to create the principles of design. But you always need some of the elements, and sometimes you'll use them all. Now, we'll go back to principles of design later. We'll come back to that and study that after we've studied all the elements of art. But there's a new way that I like to approach teaching the elements of art now, and I prefer to call it your toolbox. The elements of art are similar to tools. It's another comparison. They're used like a toolbox for building. You use building tools to build a house. In a similar way, you use the elements of art to create principles of design. If you were going to build a house, you would need hammers and saws, nails, lumber, sheetrock, paint, bricks, and many other tools and materials, and a plan, which is usually called a blueprint for a house. So when applied to the elements of art, they are similar to the tools that you would use because once applied properly, you can use them to develop principles of design. Not to build a house, well, maybe to build a house, maybe to build an art house. But when principles of design are placed together, they create the whole art composition. So when you place all these things you build together out of your tools, you create the whole house. I hope you catch that analogy because I'm going to use this quite often this year. I'm going to say use your tools, which means your elements of art. As I mentioned before, the first element that we're going to take a close look at is line. You may have heard that a line is a dot that takes a walk, and that's a fun way to think about it. You've probably already used contour line, but maybe you didn't know it was called a contour line. It's one of the most popular ways to draw, especially when you first start drawing, is to define the edges of an object with the edges of the object are drawn. Contour lines will define both the edges of an object and the negative space that is between them. So if you look at the ladder over here with the little man on it, between the rungs, that's negative space. Contour line refers to the outline of a shape or a space. You'll take a look at the bird. You'll see that the outline of the bird is defined and the outline of the little branch, but also other things are defined, such as the beak and the wings and the tail feathers, the eye. Everything about this little bird is defined with contour lines. That would be outside edges of whatever you're drawing. So if you're drawing the outside edges of the bird, that's fine, but then also you would be drawing the outside edges of the wing. Remember, that's called contour line. Have you ever tried to just draw all the different kinds of lines that you could think of, like straight and jagged and smooth, light, dark, thin, thick? Well, you were dealing with line quality if you were doing that. There's all kinds of lines, probably an indefinite number of lines, but a lot of it refers to what the quality of this line is. What does it look like? So if you come up with extra adjectives, you'll probably come up with extra line qualities. Please notice that there is some shading in these, the three pictures that I have up here. Now, the shading was not done with the side of your pencil like you might be shading in some kind of a shape with the side of your pencil, but instead it's shaded with the thickness or thinness of the line and how they come together. Other ways to describe a line would be to describe their direction. Vertical lines are usually thought of as strong lines. They run up and down like a light pole, fence post, or a flagpole, and they often indicate strength. On the other hand, horizontal lines would run across from side to side. Where the ocean meets the sky at the top of the table, that's examples. There are many horizontal lines in landscapes, and they often indicate calmness and peace. You might also notice that the word horizon, which is where the earth meets the sky or the sky meets the ocean, that word horizon is in the word horizontal, so that will help you remember the direction. A curved line is a line that changes directions gradually and smoothly to create that curve, and it suggests things like movement, which we're going to get to later in Principles of Design, and it suggests grace, just, more solemn than a zigzag line. Zigzag lines are diagonal lines that are placed together to form ragged edges usually, and it usually suggests turmoil, danger, something haphazard. They can be even zigzag lines or they can take off in erratic directions. And then you have your diagonal line, which is neither vertical nor horizontal, but it's in between the two. It's a slanted line. So let's review. Vertical lines run up and down like a light pole, fence post, or flagpole, and they often indicate strength. The trunk of a tree is an example of a vertical line. A horizontal line will run side to side. Where the ocean meets the sky and the top of a table, those are two examples. There's many horizontal lines when you draw landscapes, and they often indicate calmness and peace, but not always, depending on the line. A diagonal line is neither straight up and down vertical or straight across horizontal, but it's somewhere in between the two. It's a slanted line. The sides of a mountain, the sides of a teepee, those are some examples. Curved lines change directions very gradually and smoothly, and they suggest grace and movement. Movement is something that we're going to come back to and try to achieve in many of our artworks. A zigzag line, it goes in different directions. It's a straight line that connects and has turning points in it, and it can go evenly or it can go in erratic directions. Did you happen to notice that I didn't include straight lines in this group? Because everybody seems to understand straight lines. As an art teacher, when I meet someone who thinks they're not creative or not artistic, they often tell me, oh, I don't have any creative ability whatsoever. I can't even draw I bet you could fill in the blank, straight line. You know what my answer to that is? That's the reason way back in the 6th century, a well-known Greek engineer and sculptor named Theodorus of Crete invented a ruler. So my point is, use what you need to in art to achieve what you want. You can use the edge of a book or a ruler to make a straight line. I'm going to show you some pictures so that you'll be inspired by the time I get to your assignment at the very end of this video. Years ago, when people were learning to sew, they would make samplers of different kinds of stitches so that they could practice. This is a sampler of lines. Not a sampler of sewing, just some line designs. If you want to come back to this later, you could always pause the video here so that you could incorporate some of these designs into your assignment. Here's another sampler. There's endless ways to combine lines to make patterns, and these are just some suggestions. You can make up your own. That's really what I'd love for you to do. But these can get you started if you're having trouble getting ideas. Here's one way you could use these samplers. You could pick out one design out of it and combine it to make your own line. Any of these would work that way. And the repetition's nice. Are you ready to apply some of the hints in this video? Let's get started. I'd like you to pay close attention to the line drawing assignment. I'm going to go over it with you and explain a little bit. But if you forget, you can always come back here to the video and pause right here so that you can read it again. I want to stress what's in the navy blue box with the yellow lettering up there. You're going to place your name, hour, and class number neatly on the back of the paper, on the back of the paper. I don't want big, sloppy, ugly lettering that I can't read. Take your time, make it nice. If you have trouble doing that, we can practice that. But I bet you won't need that practice. Okay, the supplies you're going to need for this project are unlined paper. I do not want to see any artwork done on lined paper unless there's a specific reason that we are doing that. Artwork should be on nice paper. So if you have a sketchbook or a mixed media book in the classroom, you might want to use that. And you'll also need a pencil. It's your choice whether to use a pencil or a black marker. We're not going to use color on this particular assignment. The first idea or the first step is to create a design using at least 3 different kinds of lines. Now I'm going to show you some pictures in a moment that, well, let me just show you one now. Okay, take a look at these. I don't see 3 kinds of lines in this. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's interesting to look at, but I don't see the 3 different kinds of lines. I actually see 2. There are thick lines, there are thin lines, and there are straight lines. So this doesn't really meet having at least 3 kinds of lines. Now take a look at this one. I prefer the one on the left. I don't know which one you like. You can decide that. But the reason I prefer it is because it has both thin and thick lines. It attracts my eye more than the one on the right because while they're both very similar, I've turned one vertically and one horizontally here, but they're both very similar in pattern. However, there's more detail on the left. And I like the repetition in both of them, where you repeat the same kinds of lines to balance out everything all over the page. But my preference is the one on the left. The one on the left, I see dotted lines, I see curving lines, I see spiral lines, I see light and dark lines. The one on the right does not have as much variety. Okay, we'll pop over to the one that I liked best for last time on the left here. But interestingly, if I were choosing between these, I love the one on the right. Are there multiple kinds of lines in the one on the right? You know what, at first I didn't think so. But if you look very closely and think about it, there's thick lines, thin lines, and curving lines in both of these compositions. So both of them would meet the criteria. What I'm asking you to do is to be able to identify the different kinds of lines that you use. You need at least 3 different kinds. And they could be straight lines, they could be diagonal lines. Again, just be ready to defend how many different kinds of lines you have in your artwork if I would ask you that. Whatever page you choose to make, you're going to fill that entire page deliberately with drawn lines. Scribbles aren't necessarily a bad thing, but they're not going to be a part of this particular assignment. Don't strive to make a picture. Don't try to make a monkey or a car or a flower. You can include pictures in your design, but don't try to make it an overall design of like you're trying to achieve a portrait or something. You're just trying to fill the whole space with lines. When you finish, you're going to find part of your design that you like best and cut it to fit into one of my clear CD cases. You'll use that CD case as a pattern. I want you to be sure to check the back of your work after you cut it out to the correct size because you may need to rewrite your name your full name, hour, and class number if you cut off that part. Save the part you cut off and place it in your art journal. You can use this later, and I'll give you some hints later of how to do that. I'll give you a little preview of part 2 of your next assignment before I end this video. In part 2 of the Elements of Art, we are going to study a little bit more about some actual lines and some implied lines, and then we're going to skip to the bottom of the Elements of Art and talk about space. It's not space like outer space, but it's space within a composition. So tomorrow we'll be combining line and space. Now I'd love for you to click that thumbs up button for me because it helps YouTube recommend my videos to other people so that I can help them learn also. Good luck with your project, and thank you for watching.